released in space from their Shenzhou-17 piers and live aboard the Tiangong for about 6 months. Well, Shenzhou-18 is the 32nd flight mission of China's manned space program, which began over 30 years ago. The spacecraft is the third manned mission at the Tiangong space station's application and development stage. The Shenzhou-18 crew has been unveiled, and the departure hour for China's space station is also set. Our Sun Ye has the latest.
This is the Shenzhou-18 crew meeting the press on Space Day of China at the place where China's space industry started more than 50 years ago. Their mission starts on Thursday evening. Ye Guangfu, a familiar face for the Chinese people from the history-making Shenzhou-13 mission, is now the commander. Cong and Li Guangsu are both space first-timers and part of the third batch of Taikonauts. Commander Ye Guangfu, who often championed China's space development's openness, said yet again that spacefaring is for the good of all humankind, a message he exchanged with international colleagues the last time in space.
At that time, I was in the Chinese space station and the other taikonaut was in the International Space Station. But we both expressed the hope of exploring the vast universe together for the benefit of all humankind. I believe that development of China's space missions will make a greater contribution to man's shared future.
Answering a question from CGTN, Li Guangsu said he had high hopes from his maiden spaceflight.
Being able to join this mission is my great fortune. Now that the baton of China's space development has been passed on to us, I feel very honored.
On Wednesday, China Manned Space Agency said the fourth batch of Chinese Taikonauts, a group that has been selected but was yet to be made public, would be joining the China Space Station program later, as they would also be working with all the active Taikonauts for future manned moon missions. And China plans to land its first Taikonauts on the moon by 2030.
Rockets for manned lunar missions are currently undergoing ground testing for various engines. Construction of the Wenchang Manned Lunar Exploration Launch Site has started. Plans for manned lunar landers, scientific payloads for probing moon surface are also being selected. Manned lunar exploration is challenging, innovative, and progressive. We will work to ensure the missions are completed on time.
China Manned Space Agency also said it's actively working to ensure that foreign astronauts and space tourists can join flights to the China Space Station in the future. Sun Ye, CGTN, Jiuquan, Gansu Province.
So only half an hour left until the launch of the Shenzhou-18 spacecraft. In the past 30 minutes, the first group of rotating platforms at the launch tower has opened, and you can see the live picture of the launch tower. You can see the escape tower at the top of the rocket. So, Professor, what kind of key steps have been completed by now, and what other key steps are coming up?
Well, just during this procedure, you know that as you already mentioned, we've already seen the escape tower on the top of the rocket, which means that at this right moment, although we are still doing a lot of checking of all subsystems, but if anything wrong happened, because you know that just from the previous video, we've already seen that the not only the hatch between the outer module and the re-entry capsule has already been closed, but also you know that the panel on the side of the payload fairing are already sealed. So at this moment, if anything wrong happened, we can use the emergency escape system to save the lives of our astronauts. Moreover, you can see that you may hear the voice from the commander in Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center to check the status, not only the launch vehicle, the spacecraft, and also the status of every ground stations along the trajectory. For instance, you know that Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center is located in the northwest of China, but the trajectory of the Long March 2F is going eastwards until the entering the orbit near the eastern coast of China. So during all these procedures, there are a lot of ground stations along the trajectory, and maybe not also have the space tracking ships in the Pacific Ocean. So we must ensure not only the launch site system, the rocket system, the Shenzhou spaceship system are going okay, but also all the ground stations must in a good status. So this is very necessary in the whole procedure, and they have already have the rehearsal many times before. And today, as we already seen, just only 3 to 2 hours before the flight, we also have the numerical simulations to check it again and again and again.
Yeah, we're approaching 30 minutes prior to launch, and you can actually see the side boosters and the first stage engine out there. So parts of the launch tower has opened.
Yeah.
Except for the last part that is enclosing the spacecraft.
You see, for the launch complex, we built that in 1990s. It has 4 rotational platforms, but very interesting, the first one on the top will be opened. And then we open the other 3 ones from the bottom to the top. But you know that because the emergency escape system must be activated just very close to launch, so that must be opened first. And then, as you mentioned, the one on the bottom will be opened, so we can first see the 4 boosters and the core stage. You know that Long March 2.
So we've got some movement coming up.
Okay.
Opening.
Maybe this is the last platform.
各号注意，我是0号，30分钟准备，长征。
30 minutes.
That's T minus 30 minutes. Yes, that is the spacecraft. You can see this is the fairing covering the spacecraft.
先锋
And right now the 3 astronauts are strapped in.
08号。
The weather looks quite nice, Professor. So what would be an ideal weather for a launch like this?
The ideal would be we have clear air, we have no wind or very little windy days, we have low humidity, and of course we don't want it to be a rainy day or even lightnings. We want to keep clear from all the lightning or other, say, extreme conditions.
Now, space launches, it's said that they don't usually take place in April because of the risk of strong winds and sandstorms. So they are taking a bit of a risk here.
Yeah, I think because of usually in the spring, even we're in Beijing, we feel the weather changing dramatically in April. Yeah, that's pretty much the same in the northern part of China. Yeah, so usually they try to prevent this period, but as Professor Yang mentioned, they have specific reasons for a lot of prerequisites need to meet in order to fit the schedule of the launching.
One important factor we must consider is that because in this operation phase of our Tiangong space station, we must have 2 rocket launch in the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. The interval is half a year. So maybe one of the season is, for instance, August will be very ideal. But if we launch that Shenzhou spaceship in August, which means that after 6 months, it will be in winter, extremely cold weather. So that will be not very feasible. So the most ideal choice will be one in spring and the other in autumn. So that will be better, not too bad for us.
This is a great view of the rocket. You can see the full rocket by now. Is the rocket running on its own?
No, at this moment you can see that they're not, although already all the rotational platforms has already leaving the rocket, but you can still see some small arms, mechanical arms connected to the launch vehicle. As I mentioned before, there are a lot of cables, pipes, and other connections to the launch vehicle. So at this moment, still we use electricity from the ground. So this is to save the energy in the storage batteries either inside the carrier rocket and also inside the spacecraft. So only several minutes before the flight, we change the power supply from the ground electricity power supply to the inner storage batteries. So this is also obviously is a very critical procedure for the launch, but you know that usually nothing serious. But not only this, you know that we choose what we call the hypergolic propulsion system, which use the UDMH or unsymmetrical dimethyl hydrazine and nitrogen tetroxide as the fuel and oxidizer. For both these propellants can work in room temperature, so very convenient for use, but it is toxic and corrosive. So you may notice in the Wenchang spacecraft launch site, we use another choice, use cryogenic propulsion system, which use liquid oxygen and liquid hydrogen.
And when will the team be leaving the launch tower?
I believe most of the ground staff now at this moment has already left the launch complex, but maybe still remains because that they leave the launch complex with different batches. So some are in charge of certain subsystems. When their task has been accomplished, they will leave, and then maybe some critical systems still need the logistics, so they will leave at the last moment.
And the safe zone,
maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes before the flight.
The safe zone is at least 1.5 kilometers away, and we are a little more than 25 minutes prior to the launch. The Shenzhou-18 crew is taking a self-sufficient ecosystem with it to the China space station. The experiment they would be working on involved the second most complex vertebrate the space station has ever seen. Sun Ye has this report.
4 zebrafish, 2 females, 2 males, a bunch of hornwort. In a watertight fish tank the size of 2 or 3 water bottles, China space station's first experiment on vertebrates other than human beings looks something like this. The project on aquatic life support system in space is part of the many science studies the Shenzhou-18 mission will undertake. Professor Wang Gaohong, one of the scientists behind this lively experiment, says the aim is to keep the small ecosystem self-sufficient, where the homeward conducts photosynthesis with LED light and let the fish be alive and happy for a month. So happy that they may lay eggs.
Taikonauts would take care of the fish tank. For instance, if the fish lay eggs, they will help in collecting the eggs. They will also take water samples. We will monitor the changes in the water samples. We will also videotape the fish tank and see how the fish behave.
Wang said the scientists prefer that the group stays limited to 4, lest a bigger crowd crashes the system. But even if it's small size-wise, the self-circulating ecosystem could be telling the scientists something big.
Zebrafish are lab rats in water, and they're quite close to us humans. They share over 80% of our genes. Some human diseases can be studied using zebrafish as model organisms. Since water occupies such a large part of our Earth, in the long term, the study of this aquatic ecosystem would help us better understand the Earth's ecosystem.
In time, the experiment could also lead to some real-life use in space. Wang said fishes are efficient sources of food, and if they can be farmed in space, they could be a good source of protein for astronauts. Wang also said the team is eyeing to scale up the experiment in the future, where fish can live a whole life cycle in space, from egg to another egg. 专业 CGTN 酒泉甘肃 Province。
So Professor Sui, you're pretty excited about the studies on zebrafish in space. What kind of real life implications would that have on our daily lives?
So as we discussed, I think about 2 hours ago, that this experiment is very excited, is bringing this very vibrant fish to the space. So zebrafish is a very important animal model for biological study. In the field of animal study, we have fruit flies, zebrafish, mice to be the very standard used animals to study a variety of different diseases and also biological processes of animals. And zebrafish as the very simple but also very close to our human beings vertebrate. Yeah, so it's a vertebrate comparing to fruit flies. They are non-vertebrate. But in the future, we may have more complicated, complex biological systems in the space. But this is actually a very important and very complex species in the space. As the reporter mentioned, is we actually share 80% of our genes with zebrafish. And zebrafish, our scientists has already sequencing the whole genome. of this animal. Yeah, so the study of this animal can go into very details on the behavior level, on their mechanics and biological micro scale level, and also on the very micro, say about their genes, about their molecules on that level too.
What other studies or scientific experiments have caught your eye?
The others are some stem cell experiments. Although those I would expect one day there are animal stem cell experiments, but right now they're doing plants stem cell experiments in space, because on Earth we know that stem cells are the very important cells that can grow into any specific cell type. Into our body or into the animal or the plant, right? So understanding their behavior besides our regular gravity condition in those microgravity space would probably lead to some new findings on how they grow and how they prosper. Yeah, and probably will lead to a future of, say, better economy of plants. Yeah.
Now, other than these scientific experiments, another major task for these crew members are major maintenance upgrades, right? They would use some of the spacewalks to do some maintenance work and make the spacecraft more collision-proof and crash-proof. Talk to us more about that. What kind of risk will the space station face while they're in orbit?
Well, Chuan, you may still remember during the live coverage of the Shenzhou-17 mission, we mentioned that the Shenzhou-17 mission conducted the first maintenance during the EVA, actually speaking, to repair our solar panels in the Tianhe-1 core module. This is because, that according to the announcement yesterday by Mr. Lin Xiqiang, some parts of our solar panels on the Tianhe-1 core module were damaged by the space debris because it's already orbiting the Earth for more than 3 years. So it is a serious problem. You see that only some unimportant parts were impacted by this debris. So nothing serious happened, but still we recovered the function of the solar panels by our EVA. But you cannot be sure that for the next 10 years, some of the space debris may hit the critical parts of our Tianhe space station. We have a lot of pipes, cables, and other critical things outside our station. And the important thing is that these parts are very critical for the normal operation of our space station. Also, that during the live coverage of the EVA of the previous missions before, we have the operation of mounting some motors for the cooling system of Tianhe space station, some pumps. And these pumps are also very important to keep the thermal control or keep the temperature very normal inside the station. But you know that there are coolant inside these pipes. If it was heat, there will be leakage. Very, very terrible. So we must protect these pipes and also some very critical cables, either for the maintenance or for the scientific research. So what you mentioned, this step is very, very necessary. So this will be one of the major tasks of our Shenzhou-18 crew. I believe that they've already been well trained for this.
Yeah, as you were speaking, we were looking at live pictures near the launch pad. There were huge crowds of people watching, waiting for the liftoff, watching the historic moment with us. Now, as we speak, the 3 astronauts are already in position, strapped in. Not much of movement there. They are quietly waiting for, the final procedures, the final checks up. We're approaching 15 minutes prior to launch.
Yes.
And you mentioned Shenzhou-17 crew, right? The Shenzhou-18 crew will be welcomed by their peers from the Shenzhou-17 crew.
There is a very, very interesting experience of the Shenzhou actually speaking, Shenzhou-17 crew and Shenzhou-16 crew. You know that during the launch of the Shenzhou-17 spacecraft, you know that Shenzhou-16 crew is watching the live coverage inside Tianhe space station. And when your colleagues of the CMG see this video, and she actually Ms. Lao Chunyan say hello to Mr. Jing Haipeng, the commander. And it is very interesting that Jing Haipeng react to her greeting. So
It's
this
like a
shows
ground to
that the
space
communication between our Tiangong space station and the ground is already very, very powerful now.
Very smooth connection there. I'm sure the Shenzhou-17 crew are watching
The live coverage.
the live coverage of
Yeah.
this launch as well. With our Mandarin service, we might be able to see them later in the program. Very exciting moment.
Yeah, because you know that we have the Tianlian data relay satellite. At this moment, we have both the first generation and the second generation Tianlian data relay satellite. So we can have multiple video streams, very high definition video streams, multiple from the cameras mounted in everywhere inside our Tiangong space station to give these videos to the ground. So we can, during this live coverage, not only the astronaut inside our Tiangong space station can see the launch procedure, but also we can see they are watching the live coverage.
Yeah, so the Shenzhou-17 crew and Shenzhou-18 crew will conduct another in-orbit handover.
Yes.
So we will see 6 astronauts in the space station at a time. Will that be a challenge?
This will be the 4th time we see this historical moment between the Shenzhou-17 crew and the Shenzhou-18 crew. That will be a very exciting moment, but not so exciting as the first one, because you know that we've already been very practical for this procedure, and also you know that to support and to realize this moment, we need the support from the what we call the regenerative environmental control and life support system, because it is it can recycle all the resources, the water, oxygen, and so on. So at this moment, still you can see, usually in most cases, we can see the video camera mounted inside our re-entry capsule. Usually the commander and his companions usually sometimes read the manuals. You may notice that the manual not only includes the operations, the guidance of what they should do next, but also it has information, very necessary information when something wrong happened, what they should do.
15分钟准备，长征，神舟。
Yeah, that's the call out.
Shenzhou
T
18
minus 15 minutes. And we've noticed that all the Shenzhou-18 crew were selected from 2010 and 2020. That's the second batch and the third batch of astronauts. And we're hearing rumors that the selection process for the 4th batch of astronauts will be finished soon. When do you think these new Taikonauts will start their
15分钟准
mission?
备，调度直通波，金山，
金山明白，
华山，
华山明白。
太原。
You know that during the 3rd batch of our astronauts, we already have flight engineers and payload experts. Mr. Gui Haichao from the Beihang University is the first payload expert. So in the future, because our technology becomes more and more practical and the Shenzhou space become more and more comfortable, so I believe professors like Mr. Sui maybe will be more and more of these scientists like him to go to the outer space.
Like a payload expert. Expert.
And according to authorities, it's very likely that these new astronauts could be a part of the moon landing mission in the very near future.
Well, according to Mr. Yang Liwei, our first astronaut, he mentioned to the major media of China that all the astronauts chosen for the human missions to the moon will first have their experience inside our Tiangong space station. Right. So this is a necessary requirement raised by ourselves. Yeah. I believe, as I mentioned, their experience in the Tiangong space station for half a year will be very, very helpful for them for the future moon missions, although the procedure is quite different.
And there were several candidates from Hong Kong and Macau making it to the final stages of the selection process. So, you know, we could see new astronauts from these regions very soon. Let's get more updates from the launch pad. We can now go live to our reporter, Sun Ye. Sun Ye, great to see you. Also, Huang Yue is joining us from the Beijing Aerospace Control Center. Hey, great to see you too. So let's start with Sun Ye. Walk us through the preparations prior to the launch. We're getting really close. How are the astronauts doing now?
Hey there, Jiuquan, and hello again. Yes, the preparation is going at the last stage right now. It's minus 15 minutes until the launch, so throughout the last half an hour or so, we're seeing the last fires of cars leaving, and that means the rocket and everything in it is pretty much on its own, and they are ready. And then the astronauts, we earlier checked in with an expert with the astronaut system, and he said the Shenzhou-18 crew, they're doing fine. They're breathing all right. Their heart rates are fine. Now, this is probably the only chance we'll get to see the rocket here in its hull, and this spectacular scene. I think maybe it's all right if we take around a minute or so to have a good look, a last look at it before it goes up to space. Now, this Long March 2F manned carrier rocket, it actually came in compartments, in pieces, and was carried by train from northern China to here in Jiuquan in northwest China. And I think you're getting a better picture than me now. And I'm going to walk you through how this beautiful rocket is put together. Now, the first step is to put the core stage 1. That's the first thing to get stable, and then the 4 boosters, they are then attached to it, and then that's the core stage 2. The spaceship along with the fairing, they are close together in another place before they are transported to meet the other 2 stages already done. And the last item in that assembly is the escape tower. Now, the rocket has been in great condition ever since that assembly, and we have seen it rolled out earlier last week. And ever since then, it's checks and rechecking done by people across the systems. We also just talked to an expert with the rocket system. His work up until now is still checking that the rockets are fine, and the rocket is fine, and the spaceship is fine so far as we know. So everything is set for the launch that's happening in a few minutes.
Thank you very much. And as you were speaking, Sonia, the launch time has been adjusted, has been moved up a little bit, just a little bit. Now, turning to you, Huang Yue, the Beijing Aerospace Control Center is overseeing Shenzhou-18's launch. What's the latest there?
Yes, Jiuquan, the launch time is just around the corner, only a few minutes left. So here in the Beijing Aerospace Control Center, every staff member is busy making the last-minute preparations, as it's the command and information exchange center to ensure that every step and every aspect of the mission runs smoothly. So we are now actually on the 3rd floor of the center, and on the 1st floor is the ground control team, and which is mainly responsible for the control and command over all working systems, such as those on the rockets, the spacecraft, the space station, and the launch site. And actually, if you and our audience once followed our previous missions, you might have already known that this team has a very special nickname called Beijing Copy, because this phrase once became so popular on Chinese social media platforms because it's going to be used so frequently and repeatedly in the hall after launching. And actually, I arrived here hours earlier before the launch because, to be honest, this is also the first time for me to cover the launch mission. So I came here earlier trying to get more familiar with the situation. And one of the things that impressed me the most is that the team members here are quite young, and many of them are in their 30s or even 20s. So you can tell that people born in the 1990s have already become the main workforce for China's aerospace industry, and they're so calm and confident. It doesn't mean that they won't get nervous. Of course they could be, but they won't show that because they've already had a vigorous trainings and tests, and they are professional enough, they are intelligent enough to deal with any situation. So from them, you can see a very promising future for China's aerospace industry. And in addition to the ground control team, behind me there were 2 screens. As you can see, one shows the launch site and the other one shows a return capsule. And inside there are 3 Taikonauts, the Shenzhou-17 crew members, and they are making the final preparation and waiting for their colleagues to come and meet with them. And I was told that they can actually watch the live broadcast of the mission. But of course, they are watching the CCTV 30, the Mandarin channel. But next time, I do suggest that they watch CGTN special live coverage, because I'm not worried about their language skills. And I believe they must also be very excited, because after a 6-month business trip to space, on the end of this month, they will come down back to Earth and they will meet their friends, families, and colleagues. Back to you, Jiuquan.
Thank you very much. Huang Yue live for us in Beijing there. Now, medical protective measures are important for Taikonauts to stay in space for a long time. And for the Shenzhou-18 mission, these are already in place. Li Yinghui, Deputy Chief Designer of the Astronaut System of China's Manned Space Program, explains how these measures keep Taikonauts healthy in space.
For the Shenzhou-18 mission, we took personalized medical protection measures to keep our Taikonauts healthy. This proved effective in the second space trip for Ye Guangfu this time. What's more, for this mission, we conducted a series of medical experiments in space. They cover several aspects. For example, we've done in-depth research on health assessment model building on the known risks. They will enrich our established knowledge, technical reserves, and database. They will also provide us more theoretical and technical support. We also use traditional Chinese medicine like acupoint therapy, which adds to the healthy protection for Taikonauts.
For those of you who just joined us, you're watching our special coverage of the Shenzhou-18 launch. We're less than 15 minutes to go till the launch. And as our Sun-Yan earlier mentioned, all the ground staff have pulled back already. And but the rocket is still attached. Is it? Is it still attached to the launch tower? It's not running on its own just yet.
You may notice that the rotational arms in the middle of the rocket is still connected to attached to the launch vehicle. So which means that still we have the cables provide the electricity to the launch vehicle, and also maybe at about 3 minutes, 5 or 3 minutes, some of the arms will leave the launch vehicle and the launch vehicle will stand on its own. But you know that I can still still notice that when you talk with Ms. Sun Ye, I noticed that the commander and also his crew members are still reading the manual very carefully. Also, you know that yesterday during the conference, when the crew member meet with the media, you know that they are full of confidence, but they are not so very careful and be aware of what the challenge they will face. So, like their previous crew members, they are reading their manual. As I mentioned, not only the normal operations and the normal procedure, but also all the conditions they must possibly to be faced. So this is this shows that they are very, very professional.
Yeah, we're approaching T-minus 5 minutes.
Okay.
There you go, the call out.
So in the coming minutes, we will have several very, very important steps, as we've already discussed. The transfer of power supply from the ground to the launch vehicle itself, and also the activation of the what we call the guidance, navigation, and control system, or the GNC system. And also, as we've already heard many times, the commander in Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center, usually we call that the Commander Zero.
Oh, they've put down their face shield.
Okay, they close the face mask of their helmet. So at this moment, they have formed the second airtight sealings as a backup measure to ensure their safety.
And they're still looking at their manuals. What kind of things are on their checklist? You would assume?
There are all kinds of instructions on if you met this problem, how to solve it, how to do any right operation or the right choice.
Yeah, and it's usually very quiet at the launch control around this time as we're getting really close to time zero. Not so much calm going on there except for a few simple commands and the final countdown. And that's because the final status checks by now, most of them have been completed, so that's a good sign. You don't want to hear too much noises around this time.
Yep. And also, you know that today in the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center and in other launch sites of China, we also use UAV, a manned air vehicle, to give a good sight of the launch, the whole launch procedure itself. And also, in every live coverage, we can see from our CGTN coverage, we can see the videos from the cameras mounted on the launch vehicle. So that's also a very good reference for us to ensure the status of the launch vehicle and also everything goes okay.
And you're looking at the launch control. T-minus 3 minutes. I suppose everybody is going through their own task procedure for a final time in their mind. Super focused because this is a teamwork, right? Everybody needs to do their job perfectly right to make sure we have a good launch. Quite a nerve-wracking moment for the flight crew, for the whole launch team.
You may notice that
all of us were watching.
Rotational arms, some of the rotational arms will begin to move from the fuselage of the rocket. We also mount cameras to monitor the status of these rotational arms because there are very important cables and pipes connected to the launch vehicle.
What do you think is going through the astronaut's mind? I think as much as this is a moment for excitement, this could be a moment for anxiety.
You know,
too.
that they have been trained many times for this. You know, that from the experience, not with Chinese astronauts, some of my friends, the foreign astronauts, they said they cannot distinguish from a simulation or a real one. So this shows that they've been trained so intensively, and the simulation is feels so real.
To it.
Today, with the VR and AR technology, it becomes more real than before.
Yeah. And really, there's not much they can do for this short period of time. They're being strapped in, things are out of their hands. They're basically relying on their team to get them out there safely.
Usually, they will salute before the, maybe several seconds before the liftoff.
We're approaching T-minus 2 minutes, I guess.
Yep. This is a beautiful evening of Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center.
各号注意，我是0号，1分钟准备。
各号注意，1分钟准备。
1 minute out. An incredible moment to witness. Truly a magnificent view.
50秒。
Yeah, the weather is a bit cloudy in Jiuquan, so the reporter
Okay.
mentioned that we may or may not see the moon.
40秒。
Yeah.
The
major
rotational
movement.
arms has already been rotated.
So the umbilicals just pulled away. This is some riveting feat there. You can see the Shenzhou-17
Yeah, as we
crew.
mentioned, they are watching the live coverage.
Yeah. And they have decorated the space station a little bit, put up welcome banners.
Yeah.
20秒。
20秒。
20 seconds to go. It's a go for the launch. The Shenzhou-18 is just seconds away from blastoff.
9、
9,
8、
8, 7,
6、
6,
5、
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
点火，
Ignition.
准备，起飞，秒正时。
And at the moment, 20 seconds after the liftoff, we will have a pitch over, which means that the flight direction will change from a vertical one to the horizontal one, to the eastward.
Just a spectacular view there.
Yeah, you can see the 8 engines working very perfect.
And you can hear the voices from the launch team providing tracking status, saying things are going good, and that's
Great.
what we like
You
to
can
hear.
see the videos from the camera mounted, looking backwards.
So these are the side boosters.
Yeah, we can see 2 of the side boosters. And at about, okay, I believe this moment already the pitch over has already been accomplished.
So if things goes well, we could see the escape tower being detached in just a few minutes.
We just heard that the ground stations report that everything goes okay, the flight is normal.
And we can see both the infrared image and the optical image.
Exactly. So at the moment of the 120 second will be the critical step to jettison the escape tower.
So the escape tower is essentially a small solid fuel rocket set on top of the capsule. In the event of an emergency, such as an impending
because at the
explosion,
moment
it'll pull the capsule far enough away from the launch vehicle to allow for a normal parachute land.
Because at the moment of 2 minutes, it's already high enough, so we don't need the escape tower. But still, we have emergency escape engines on the payload ferry. We can see that during the live coverage previously. We can see the trail, as you mentioned, on this maybe infrared image.
Yeah, if it's during the day, we could see it very clearly, but because it's dark.
But we don't have other choices
Yeah.
because of the launch window just lie in this moment.
Yeah. So we're relying on the infrared image now. Another critical step coming up very soon.
At the moment, 153 minutes. Okay, great.
Oh, that's the call out.
The emergency escape tower has already separated, and then will be the separation of the 4 boosters.
So you saw a bright flash over there. The
Just
emergency
half a minute
escape
later.
system have been separated, indicating the initial low-level flight went pretty well.
Yeah, it's already supersonic now. Great.
Booster separation.
The separation of 4 boosters, and then the separation of the first stage.
Immediately.
助推器分离，
一二级分离，
一级
We
关
have the
机，
first
一二级
stage
分离。
separation. A successful separation.
Great. And the next critical step will be the separation of the payload fairings.
东风、光学、USB、雷达跟踪正
In the
常，
past
遥
few
测信号正常。
minutes,
东
we've seen
风
a
飞行正
series
常
of。fast maneuvers and status reports there.
Now the combination of the Shenzhou spacecraft and the launch vehicle is flying eastwards. Oh, this is video cameras mounted on the rear part of the second stage. And camera is inside the payload fairing, looking forward. You can see that's okay.
There you have
The
it.
separation of the payload fairing.
抛整流罩，
抛整流
Roughly
罩，
4 minutes into the flight, we are seeing fairing jettison.
神舟18号报告，整流罩分离。
So now the spacecraft is exposed in space.
北京明
I
白。
just heard the voice of Mr. Ye Guangfu, the commander. He reported that the payload fairings, now they can see the sightseeing outside. But I believe 02 and 03 have a better view.
Yeah, they've got a window seat.
Yeah. But
I
there is
wonder-
no aisle seat.
I wonder what they could see from their windows
Yeah.
now.
Usually, in the previous missions, sometimes they can entering the sunshine areas, but this moment they are still in the shadow areas of the Earth.
So in about few minutes, we're gonna see the second stage rocket being dropped. So
Well, the second
spacecraft
stage works
separation.
much longer than the first stage, more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Now you can see this is the camera mount, the
就是
video
控
camera
制台接送
mounted
东风、光学、
on the second
USB、
stage.
雷达跟踪正常，遥
Is
测信
this
号
the
正
time
常。
that the
东
crew
风
will
飞行正
feel
常。
maximum G forces?
Usually that happens
Right
at the
before
separation
spacecraft
of stages,
separation.
because at the moment the thrust has a certain number, but you know that with the fuel becomes less and less, and the acceleration becomes greater and greater. Usually at the separation of the first stage or the separation at the second stage, they will experience the maximum peak of the G forces.
So you might want to take a look at these astronauts and see just whether it'll show on their face or, you know, through their body gesture.
But the 3 to 4G is not a big problem for them.
It's nothing
they
for
will
them?
be trained for up to 8 to 10 Gs. And even
Wow.
in 8 to 10 Gs, they can do the right operations.
So the highest G load they're going to feel is around
10. In abnormal
During
cases.
the flight?
No, in this
It's
normal
around
flight,
5G?
usually 3.6.
Okay, that's not so bad.
Not so bad.
But that's already a large number for our normal people. Imagine you have 3 more people on yourself, right? So that's the loading.
Usually, how would your body react to that many G forces?
Usually you just need to say activate more muscles. You recruit more muscle activity to work against that over gravity.
Is there anything that they can do now to offset the effect of high G forces?
I think the design of their seat and their body posture is already very helpful for them to remove the extra forces. Yeah. So if everything's normal, as we just heard, they are actually in a quite comfortable condition, yeah, as they are very used to those in their everyday training. Yeah.
Now we can see on the left of the screen is the video camera mounted on the second stage looking backwards. Our second stage of the Long March 2F rocket have one main engine with a thrust about 80 tons. And also we have 4 vernier engines which control the attitude and the direction. So you can see the video camera monitoring the proper working of these rocket engines. Very bright, but this moment is already out of the atmosphere. Okay. Still, the Shenzhou-17 crew is watching the live coverage. They will meet after 6 or 7 hours.
Very soon, very soon.
I believe our Shenzhou-17 crew have already prepared the breakfast for our Shenzhou-18 crew.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah.
And I suppose in a few minutes after the second stage shut down, we are going to see things starting to drift, starting to float.
Yeah. But you know that the normal procedure is that we first shut down the main engine. Still, the 4 vernier engines works. And we will adjust the trajectory. Okay, as I mentioned, the main engine shut off. And the 4 vernier engines still working, and we will adjust the trajectory very precisely. So after several seconds, after we have already entered the right orbit, we will shut down the vernier engines. And then will be the separation of the spacecraft.
Yeah, so it looks like the astronauts are feeling a bit more at ease now.
Yes, because you know that because the shutdown of the main engine, the G-forces is not so remarkable now.
Yeah, as the environment is changing from high G-forces to microgravity conditions.
Yeah. So
USB radar
when the shutdown of the vernier engine, they will experience 0 G.
Yeah, so things will start to be floating if you watch closely. Oh, that's the shot at the solar panel.
Yeah, it's still folded now.
So the next critical step would be
the shutdown of the vernier engines.
Okay.
You can see on the bottom right is a 3D simulation, but this simulation is based on the real data, which means that the position, the attitude of the launch vehicle is representing the real status. So you can see the second stage works much longer than the first one because the thrust is much smaller. We have 2 solar wings and each have 4 panels.
I think for the 2 new astronauts, Li Guangsu and Li Chong, this will be a very exciting moment.
Okay, Changjiang is a space tracking ship. The code, I believe it will be Yuanwang 7 space tracking ship. It's in the Pacific Ocean. And it's already established. Look, on the simulation, we look at the dash lines. It's already established. Okay, great. Separation confirmed.
船舰分离。
神舟18号报告，仪表显示船舰分离完毕。
So you can get a really good look at the spacecraft now in that 3D animation. 3 modules, right? Talk to us about it.
Yeah. So the next critical step will be the unfolding of the solar panels. So only with this operation we can have continuous power supply for the Shenzhou spaceship.
So by now the second stage is drifting away in space. The rocket has completed its tasks that send the spacecraft into the planned orbit successfully.
And also from the voice, we can hear that our Changjiang 7 or the Yuanwang 7 space tracking ship has already established stable communication with our Shenzhou spaceship.
And a big shout out to the Shenzhou-17 crew. They're watching us.
Yeah, they are more relaxed.
Because they will be getting back to Earth in a few days.
I believe they will not sleep this evening, this night, because they will be very, very exciting. There are visitors.
Yeah, they'll be back in about 5 days.
Yeah.
And I believe they will bring very fresh food for them.
And they've also made rooms for their friends.
There are 6 bedrooms inside of 3 in the Tianhe 1 comma.
长江7号跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
But in China's tradition, we don't have a 0G indicator. Usually in other countries, they have some toy to be the 0G indicator to show it's floating everywhere.
The ground team is confirming the status with the crew and confirming the status of the spacecraft.
And Mr. Ye Guangfu, the commander, and Mr. Tang Hongbo, the commander of the Shenzhou-17 crew, both come from the second mission. This is their second flight mission.
顶山收到，东风。东风收到。3、2、1、0。
With the separation of the end stage of the rocket, the Shenzhou-18 spacecraft is already in orbit. So next, our ground team will check the accuracy of the orbital parameters. If everything is accurate enough, we can announce that it is a successful launch.
北京明白。
长程报告，太阳帆板展开正常。
太阳帆板展开正常。
Great. The solar panels are unfolded very normally.
And what comes after this? What comes next?
Next will be the examination of the, as I mentioned, we will double check or even triple check with different data resources to check the accuracy of the optical parameters. Because this accuracy is very critical for us to chasing the Tiangong space station and the dock visit.
So we cannot just declare the success just yet. We have to wait for.
We just heard his voice that the antenna for the data relay satellites has already been unfolded very normally. You know that we have a small device to keep connection with our data relay satellite, but we also have a high gain antenna which can send videos from this antenna to the Tianlian data relay satellite. This is also very important for us.
That's a big improvement compared to previous missions.
And it also ensures the very reliable connection between the ground stations and our ground centers to our Shenzhou spacecraft. You know, every mission is risky because you know that there are so many uncertainties. So keep a very smooth communication with the Space Flight Center, Control Center will be a very good insurance to keep the success of our flight mission.
Now looking at the three astronauts.
神舟18号，我是北京。
Let's listen in.
神舟18号到。
通报座舱大气环境及身体情况。
神舟18号明白。
We've just heard ground control exchanging a few words with the flight commander, trying to confirm their status.
Air quality.
船座舱大气环境正常，航天员感觉良好，完毕。
Yeah, so Ye Guangfu just said,
feeling good.
Yeah, they're feeling okay. They're feeling good.
正常。长城，我是北京，通报座舱环境。
And the internal environment inside the spacecraft is also good.
北京明白。神舟18号，我是北京，经地面确认，座舱环境正常，可以打开面窗。
神舟18号明白。
We have a very important, very critical subsystem called the atmospheric control system. So as mentioned we heard the voice that the atmosphere inside the cabin is good. So they can open their face mask.
Yep. Another critical step.
You can see they are still busy reading their menu.
Yeah. I mean, a pretty young team we're looking at, in their 30s, 40s. Is this a trend? Are we going to see younger and younger astronauts in the future?
Yeah, I think we're looking forward to see the younger generation of astronauts. They are taking charge of more and more launching missions.
But what's considered as a prime age range for astronauts? Or there's no such thing?
I think it depends from
倾角41.5度，周期1小时30分钟的预定轨道，飞船座舱环境正常，航天员状态良好。北京出轨根数及分离点参数已向各方向发出。东风。东风明白。华山。
We've already got the orbital parameters as announced by the Beijing Flight Control Center. So the so the perigee is 200 kilometers, and the apogee is 356 kilometers, and the inclination is 41.5 degrees. So it's a very accurate launch.
It'll take an hour and a half, right, for them.
So they will spend 6.5 hours in orbit to chase our Tiangong space station and finally dock to the docking port at the bottom of our node.
And that'll be an automated rendezvous?
In normal cases, it will be a automatic one. But if anything wrong happens to the automated docking system, as you mentioned, we will switch to the manual docking. And all these crew members were well trained for this operation.
This is the Beijing Aerospace Flight Center. So after the launch, they will be taking over the monitoring job. We're still standing by for an official confirmation declaring the launch as a success.
After coming into orbit of our Shenzhou spacecraft, the control will be switch from our Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center to Beijing Flight Control Center.
So Beijing will take over.
Yeah.
Right.
I guess the ground team are doing some calculations, maybe some adjustment burns
Exactly.
for the spacecraft.
As I mentioned, we based on different data resources to confirm the accuracy of each orbital parameter to ensure that it is accurate enough. Because as we've already discussed, the Shenzhou spacecraft must enter the same orbital plane of our Tiangong space station. So this is the most essential and most important requirement to its accuracy. And then, because it is now lower than our Tiangong space station, so it orbiting the Earth faster than our Tiangong space station. So it is a chasing vehicle, and it comes closer and closer, and after 6.5 hours, we will dock together.
天路跟踪正常，遥测信号正常。
天路跟踪正常。
Tianlu is another name of our Tianlian data relay satellite system. So at this moment, it's already out of the coverage of our space tracking ship, and it is mainly based on our Tianlian data relay satellite. As we've already heard the voice, that the high gain antenna has already been unfolded. So at this moment, we can transfer not only the voices, but also can transfer the videos from our cabin of our Shenzhou spacecraft.
Right. You know, China has this three-step strategy for its space exploration. And third phase, which is the last phase, is building its space station. Can we say that we've met that target? What's next for our space exploration?
Yes, we've already accomplished this step. And next, as we mentioned, we are now in the phase of utilization and development. But still, we have a lot of work in the future. For instance, our Tiangong space station will be expanded, doubled in the future.
We're now joined by Professor Mark McCong-Reed, a former senior advisor for science and exploration at the European Space Agency in the Netherlands. Great to have you with us, Professor. Now, the Shenzhou-18 has just launched. We are standing by for an official confirmation of the launch success. But what significance does it have for space exploration?
Well, assuming everything's gone well, which it sounds like it has, congratulations to the crew and everybody involved. Going back to the space station, of course, you have 3 astronauts there already waiting for them, and then you will change the crew for another 6-month expedition, as they're often called, on the Chinese space station. This is very similar to what we've been doing for many years, of course, with the International Space Station. And as one of your speakers there just said, this is about building capacity, expanding the space station, and doing research and development, both on the space station, scientifically, doing interesting things there. In fact, one thing, as an astronomer, one thing I'm really excited about is the Zhentian space telescope, which should be launched to Tiangong, not docked to it, but nearby to it, and doing some very interesting scientific astronomy experiments over the years to come. But it's about that development, building the station, making it an efficient place to do science, but also looking forward, I imagine, to the moon and Mars.
Now, China has said astronauts from other countries are welcome to go to the China space station. It says it is committed to the peaceful development in space. How would you assess prospects for international collaboration in space exploration?
Well, that's a very interesting question, of course, particularly given the current geopolitical context. Without going into too much depth, the world is not perhaps in a happy place at the moment. And exactly how nations decide to collaborate on many things, of course, is something which is constantly in focus politically. And space is a political thing. We should never just think of it in terms of science or exploration. There is a strong political element. But I think it's also worth looking back to the past and looking, for example, at the Apollo-Soyuz test project in the 1970s, and the space station itself, the International Space Station, where, of course, the United States and Russia at the moment have grave differences over the war in Ukraine, but are still collaborating in space. So it's not an easy thing to see into the future and see how that international collaboration may also include China. But I'm optimistic that we'll find ways of doing that, because the things we want to do in space are incredibly challenging and do indeed need to bring nations together to solve some of those problems. And those problems then reflect on the Earth. We have problems on the Earth we need to solve. So being able to collaborate internationally in space also might give us hope we can collaborate internationally, for example, on climate change. So I think it's a tricky question, but let's be optimistic and see that we can actually work together.
Yeah, let's be optimistic. Thank you very much, Professor Mark Bocock-Green. Thank you very much for taking the time talking to us. We appreciate your perspectives. Now, Yang Liwei, the Deputy Chief Designer of China's manned space program, talked to CGTN reporter Zheng Yibing on international cooperation in space programs, including China's manned lunar landing. Listen in.
From the perspective of manned spaceflights, international cooperation is a well-established practice. It is true for our country and also space powers like the United States and Russia, which are cooperating even under such tense international circumstances. So we actually, from the early days till now, when we have a space station, have been seeking cooperation even though there's a lot of international constraint. Therefore, we took a path of self-reliance. For manned lunar landing, we discussed its feasibility around 2010 and 2011, and we're looking for international cooperation. We hope that different countries and institutions can join us in the whole lunar landing program, complement each other's efforts, promote the development of this cause, and explore the unknown for human beings. So I hope more countries and institutions will join us.
Stay with us for more of our live coverage on the space Shenzhou-18 launch mission. And now for more on the top stories making headlines around the world, let's head things over to my colleague Xia Cheng.
Thank you, Qiu Yuan. So first up, Chinese President Xi Jinping has called for building world-class military medical universities to serve Chinese troops. He made the remarks during a visit to the Army Medical University in Chongqing, southwest China. He said the university is an important part of the nation's military medical service force system. He also stressed the need to boost research and innovation to improve troops' combat readiness and support their physical and mental health.
It is necessary to vigorously promote characteristic medical research and innovation, consolidate traditional advantages, seize the forefront of development, and to reach the heights of military medicine. It is necessary to strengthen the construction of medical services, effectively support the combat effectiveness of troops, and meet the physical and mental health needs of officers and soldiers.
China has reaffirmed its commitment to respecting the principle of fair competition and urged the United States to do the same. It comes after U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken raised concerns about what he calls China's unfair trade practices in a meeting with officials in Shanghai.
China always conducts economic and trade cooperation in accordance with market principles, firmly supports the multilateral trading system, and fully implements WTO rules. We hope the U.S. side will respect the principle of fair competition, abide by WTO rules, and work with China to create favorable conditions for the sound and steady development of China-U.S. economic and trade relations.
Blinken is on a 3-day visit to China. He has arrived in Beijing, where he is set to meet with Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi. Blinken's visit is the latest high-level contact between the two countries. Meanwhile, TikTok says it will challenge the ban signed into law by U.S. President Biden in court and expects an ultimate win. The social media platform argues the potential ban is unconstitutional and will devastate 7 million businesses and silence 170 million Americans. TikTok stressed that it has invested billions of dollars to secure U.S. data and keep the platform free from external influence and manipulation. The firm's CEO Zhou Shouzi said in a video message that TikTok is not going anywhere and that the facts and the Constitution are on TikTok's side. He also said the firm expects to prevail again. Here again refers to the block by the courts of an attempt to ban TikTok in 2020 by then President Trump. Our John Terrett has more from New York.
Basically, the ban of TikTok is on. It's as simple as that. And from a politician's point of view, they've been rather clever, because what they did was they added it to the foreign aid bill. The House on Saturday passed $95 billion for Ukraine and for Gaza, Israel, and also for Taiwan. But they bolted on the TikTok ban. And this is not unusual in American politics. They call it pork here, as in fattening the pig or fattening the cow. It's the same thing. And what normally happens is, in order to get a congressperson's vote or a senator's vote, they'll say, well, what do you want for this vote? And they'll say, well, I want $10 million for a bridge in my constituency. So they add $10 million. Well, in this case, they've added the potential TikTok ban. And if ByteDance doesn't divest itself of TikTok within basically the next year, and preferably sell it to a US company, then the ban is going to be on. Now, TikTok is really angry about this. They're vowing to respond robustly. They're talking about court challenges, which could all push this down the road a very long way, by the way. Although I have to say, people in the Senate seem very convinced that the legislation is actually pretty robust and that this ban is likely to take place now in 9 to 10 months. TikTok says, look, it's unfair. We've got 150 to 170 million people using it, a small minority running businesses on it. And they're going to do all they can to try and delay any kind of ban and potentially overturn it.
China says it is closely watching the latest power failure at Japan's Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant. A foreign ministry spokesperson called for long-term international monitoring of Japan's release of contaminated water into the Pacific Ocean.
China has noted the power failure and the suspension of the release of contaminated water. China has also noted that a petition asking for the immediate halt to the release of the contaminated water has been handed over to the government. More than 180,000 Japanese citizens signed the petition. It has been 8 months since Japan started releasing contaminated water. There have been many accidents during this time, including the splashing of radioactive waste and leaks of nuclear contaminated water purification units, corrosion of a water storage tank, and the shutdown of the power supply system. All this shows that the concerns of the international community are reasonable. TEPCO's management of the contaminated water has little credibility. It is necessary for international society to undertake long-term and effective monitoring.
The power supply system at the Fukushima plant partly stopped on Wednesday. A spokesperson for the Chinese embassy in Japan said a series of accidents have showed that TEPCO is in chaos. China says it will continue to pay close attention on the situation there. It has asked Japan to cooperate with the establishment of international monitoring. The U.S., along with the United Nations and other concerned governments, has called on Israel to give answers for the discovery of mass graves in southern Gaza. Martin Lowe is there with the report.
Very distressing images coming out of Gaza depicting this mass grave with, we believe, up to 300 bodies buried in it, bodies of civilians. The suggestion, there's certainly a claim that many of those bodies were bound, some with their hands tied behind their backs. But as so often in a conflict situation like this, we have two totally contradictory versions of events from the two sides. Hamas officials in Gaza say they uncovered this grave. And it was found in the grounds of the Nasser hospital, where Israeli troops have been assaulting the hospital for the last several weeks. Now, they say, Hamas says, it's clear that the Israeli army is responsible for the killing of civilians and burying them in this mass grave. But the Israeli forces, the Israeli Defense Force, they have categorically denied being responsible for these deaths. They've issued a statement saying that Hamas's claims are completely baseless. What they have done is provide their version of events. They say that while they were carrying out a military operation in that area, they received intelligence that it was possible that some of the bodies of Israeli hostages who'd been killed were buried in the grounds of this hospital. So they went to the spot and they excavated and discovered the bodies, examined them, confirmed that they were not in fact Israelis, and they say so they reburied them where they found them. That is their version of events. The UN has described the existence of the grave as horrific. It is calling for an investigation, and it says if it turns out to be true that bodies were found with hands tied behind their backs, that would clearly constitute a war crime.
Protests against the war in Gaza have turned violent on the University of Texas campus in the U.S. city of Austin, with more than a dozen people arrested. They are protesting the conflict and demanding their university divesting weapon manufacturers. Tony Waterman was there and filed this report.
What you're seeing here is just the latest stage in this protest, which has been going on for hours now. And as you can see here behind me, there is this very tense standoff going off between students and the police demonstrators. Some of them locked arm in arm on one side. You have state police on the other. Some of them are on horses. Others have batons in their hands. They're in riot gear. And earlier what we saw was that some of them were using bicycles to push the crowd back, which has resulted in some very dramatic confrontations with pushing and shoving on both sides. A number of demonstrators who crossed that line or resisted being pushed back have been arrested. Some of them shoved to the ground and their hands zip-tied. School administrators telling me that they notified the organizers, the Palestine Solidarity Committee, last night, that they were not allowed to hold this demonstration. Yet upwards of 500 protesters have come out, and there were dozens and dozens more that were on the sidelines watching this all unfold. One of the protesters' main demands is for the University of Texas to divest their holdings in weapons manufacturers as the war in Gaza drags on.
It is insane that this educational institution that preaches all these high, lofty ideals about education and understanding and making the world a better place is making money off of death and destruction and genocide.
You can see real time what's happening, and when you see real time what's happening to children and babies, it's difficult not to get passionate about it.
I'm here because I'm tired of my taxpayer money, everybody's taxpayer money, funding the killing of innocents. I won't tolerate it. Nobody here will. That's why we're here.
The University of Texas has one of the largest public endowment funds in the U.S. And according to the organization Women for Weapons Trade Transparency, the fund held more than $52 million worth of debt and equity securities of 16 weapons and weapons system manufacturers. At the time, that included companies like Lockheed Martin, Raytheon, and Boeing. These students want the university to completely divest in all of those companies. In the meantime, these students say that they're going to continue their protest, and they're going to hold a vigil at the Travis County Jail where those who have been arrested are being held. Tony Waterman, CGTN, Austin, Texas.
And that's our global headlines. Back over to you, Jiuquan.
Thanks so much, Jessica. 2024 marks the 10th anniversary of the establishment of the China and Community of Latin American and Caribbean States Forum. While the first China, Latin American and Caribbean States Space Cooperation Forum is being held from Wednesday to Thursday in Wuhan City of Hubei Province. The two-day event is expected to further enhance exchanges and collaboration in the space sector among these countries. CGTN's Wu Lei has more.
For the very first time, hundreds of representatives from China, Latin American and the Caribbean countries and those from international organizations gather in Wuhan City, expanding the cooperation in the space sector. Chinese President Xi Jinping sent a congratulatory letter to the forum on Wednesday, saying China is ready to work with the Latin American and Caribbean countries to build a high-level space cooperation partnership. The key message has been echoed by many heads of space agencies.
To continue and amplify, extend, increase this cooperation. So
we are moving on the next generation of the CBERS program. We are working on radar satellites, joint mission on radar satellites, and we are discussing meteorological satellites for development of both countries.
This is the best way to build space capabilities, to build knowledge, and to disseminate what is science, technology, and knowledge to our society. We have to reinforce and to build that in our universities. So we are very focused on that. Yeah, education is a key piece of that.
The Wuhan Declaration was adopted on Wednesday at the forum, highlighting that China-Latin America space cooperation has made space technology serve the economic and social development of these countries. It has also become an indispensable driving force for South-South cooperation, which is conducive to the achievement of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals by 2030.
We have a ground table and one by one to discuss what you need, what we have, and for the cooperation, we can, for the forthcoming years, we can plan from now and foresee what kind of technology application, how to use this technology benefit all.
Latin America has become one of the regions with which China has cooperated closely in space research and development. Over the past 30 years, China and Brazil have jointly developed 6 Earth resource satellites. China and Argentina have cooperated on satellite navigation applications, and Argentina has provided support for China's deep space exploration. Global Space Agency representatives welcomed this and expressed hope for more such collaborations.
China is also cooperating with a lot of other countries. There is the Asia-Pacific Cooperative Organization. China is also cooperating with Europe and especially with the European Space Agency. So China is a big actor in the world.
China and Latin America have a common aim, that is to make proper use of space resources. They will establish a long-term mechanism for cooperation and dialogue, strengthen high-level exchanges in the aerospace field. From satellites to precision agriculture and digital capacity, space-related cooperation between China and Latin American and Caribbean states has rapidly expanded in recent years. Through these dialogues and exchanges, experts hope to promote the technology delivering more benefits to people on both sides. Wu Lei, CGTN, Wuhan, Hubei Province.
You're now watching our special coverage of the Shenzhou-18 mission, and as we speak, the Shenzhou-18 spacecraft is now heading toward the Tiangong space station. We're standing by for an official announcement from the launch control, confirming this launch as a success. So talk to us more about international cooperation in space. We've just heard the first China, Latin American, and Caribbean states Space Cooperation Forum kicked off yesterday. Professor Yang, what can we expect on space cooperation between China and these countries?
Absolutely. You see that I've seen a lot of my old friends during this conference, according to the introduction by Mr. Wu Lei. You see that I work for the International Astronautical Federation, so this is our insignia. And I always say to every media that the IAF community should play a leading role in promoting the understanding, communication, and the chances for international space cooperation. And you know, the IAC, or the International Astronautical Congress, which is called the Olympic Games in space field, held every year, and in 2016 it was held in Guadalajara, Mexico. So with that Congress, we have more attendance of the, as you mentioned, the Latin American countries and also those Caribbean countries. You see that many of these countries are space emerging countries. Also, just before the pandemic in 2019, we have a very perfect conference in Morocco called the Global Forum for the Emerging Countries in Space Field. So you know that China is already a very big space capable nations in the world. But still, there are a lot of countries such as Brazil, Mexico and some other countries, they are new emerging countries. They already have a space industry, but maybe the scale is not very big, and also they don't have much chances to have so much missions like we have. So I believe the cooperation with these countries will not only benefit them, but also that on the other hand, according to the white paper of China's space activities, we always think that if China want to turn from a big country in space field to an advanced country in the field, one important benchmark will be the international space cooperation. We think it as a very important, very necessary, very essential for us. So you can see how important it is. Moreover, there already have many proposals of space experiments inside the Tiangong space station raised by the scientists or engineers from the Latin American countries and also the Caribbean countries. So I hope in the future, so these kind of space conferences, international forums will be the first step for all of us to enhance our communication and better understanding. But we must talk about the details, and finally we will find the concrete chances for all these kind of corporations.
Yeah, and China's space station is the first project of its kind that is open to all UN member states. Right. What kind of vision do you think China has in terms of international space cooperation on board a space station?
I think international collaboration is very important, not only for China but for the whole world. As Professor Yang mentioned, that for the emerging country, the developing country, they have more needs on, say, the space launching, other stuff. But even for the developed countries, I believe the scientific experiments would provide beneficial results to all humankind. Yeah, so they would be very interested in scientific collaborations on those things. As we discussed earlier in our conversation, the microgravity, the very low gravity environment is actually providing a unique experimental playfield that nobody can achieve on Earth. Yeah, at the age of artificial intelligence, we eating almost everything on Earth. Still, what cannot be replaced is the scientific experiments, is the real observation and discovery of our physical world. Yeah, so doing those very valuable experiments in the space will be a very good starting point for international collaborations.
And China and Russia have recently agreed to jointly create an open and inclusive international lunar research station by the year 2035. What's the significance of this kind of project? What does it do? What does it contribute to China's own lunar mission?
Well, what you mentioned is what we call the International Lunar Research Station. And also just in this event, during the Space Day of China, the Space Forum held in Wuhan City, there were already, the China National Space Administration has announced there are 6 payloads from 7 countries or organizations from abroad to join our Chang'e 7 flight mission. So this is a good sign that according to the announcement of CNSA, the Chang'e 7 and the Chang'e 8 probe landed on the moon will form the basic configuration of our future international lunar research station. So these are some cooperation on the payload level. But I believe in the future we will also have cooperation with other countries such as Russia, such as European Space Agency, and other space capable nations on the mission level, which means that we can have some spacecraft launched by China, but also we can have other spacecraft launched from other countries. And these spacecraft form a whole system and to contribute with nations, but also as to not have a space industry at this moment. So, that's the International Lunar Research Space Station is open to all the world, to all countries. So today we already have many countries. For instance, last year during the International Astro Congress in Azerbaijan, in Baku, the other Cosmos, the space agency in Azerbaijan, also joined this International Lunar Research Space Station. My friends, the head of the agency, Dr. Samadin Asatov, also mentioned to me that they've already joined this program. So other countries, maybe their small industry is much smaller than the China, but they do have certain advantage either in technology or in other field. As mentioned by the previous video introduction, we have stations in Argentina. So the position of Argentina is very helpful for us to conduct deep space missions. So this is a very good example for all these countries to benefit each other and to do contributions to the whole human society.
Yeah, and satellite services, they are another set of benefits that comes from China's space program, right? China's satellite services, including a Fengyun satellite or a meteorological satellite or a Beidou navigation satellite system, they collectively serve hundreds of millions of users. How would you assess the global benefits of such services?
Yeah, I think the global commercial market would be very welcome to see that besides the GPS system, we have multiple different choices, that can provide a different level of services. Yeah, so this would be very helpful, I think, globally to provide extra value besides what we've already had. Yeah.
Now, to learn more about the spacecraft carrying out the Shenzhou-18 mission, our reporter Zheng Yibin talked to a senior researcher for the spacecraft system.
The Shenzhou-18 is a third manned spacecraft for mission to China's space station. It has the same design as Shenzhou-16, 17, and the following 19 spacecraft.
From the general technical state, there are the orbital module, the re-entry module, and the propellant module. And there are solar panels and the engines. They are consistent with the previous technological designs.
The biggest difference this time is upgrade to the spacecraft's battery, replacing the cadmium nickel battery with lighter and smaller lithium one, which has a much longer life.
The Shenzhou spacecraft as a manned vehicle requires the highest safety and reliability. The upgrade to the battery has been fully verified in our space station, cargo ships, and other spacecraft.
There were also small modifications, like a little more space for space science experiments. And Chen Tongxiang explained how Shenzhou-18's flight will go.
It is the 7th manned flight for China's space station. After liftoff from Jiuquan, it will fly for 6.5 hours and make orbital transfer, and then the fast rendezvous and docking with the space station. Shenzhou-18 crew will rotate with Shenzhou-17 crew and stay in the station for 6 months and then return.
For this mission, the Shenzhou spacecraft system has been working day and night to make sure the flight goes smoothly. Zheng Yibin, CGTN in Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center.
The Shenzhou-18 crew is taking a self-sufficient ecosystem with it to the China space station. The experiment they would be working on involved the second most complex vertebrate the space station has ever seen. Arsenio has the report.
4 zebrafish, 2 females, 2 males. A bunch of hornwort. In a watertight fish tank the size of 2 or 3 water bottles, China's space station's first experiment on vertebrates other than human beings looks something like this. The project on aquatic life support system in space is part of the many science studies the Shenzhou-18 mission will undertake. Professor Wang Gaohong, one of the scientists behind this lively experiment, says the aim is to keep the small ecosystem self-sufficient, where the homewort conducts photosynthesis with LED light and let the fish be alive and happy for a month. So happy that they may lay eggs.
Taikonauts would take care of the fish tank. For instance, if the fish lay eggs, they will help in collecting the eggs. They will also take water samples. We will monitor the changes in the water samples. We will also videotape the fish tank and see how the fish behave.
Wang said the scientists prefer that the group stays limited to 4, lest a bigger crowd crashes the system. But even if it's small size-wise, the self-circulating ecosystem could be telling the scientists something big.
Zebrafish are lab rats in water, and they're quite close to us humans. They share over 80% of our genes. Some human diseases can be studied using zebrafish as model organisms. Since water occupies such a large part of our Earth, in the long term, the study of this aquatic ecosystem would help us better understand the Earth's ecosystem.
In time, the experiment could also lead to some real-life use in space. Wang said fishes are efficient sources of food, and if they can be farmed in space, they could be a good source of protein for astronauts. Wang also said the team is eyeing to scale up the experiment in the future, where fish can live a whole life cycle in space, from egg to another egg. 深夜 CGTN 酒泉甘肃 Province.
The Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center is home to China's first space mission. More than 6 decades later, it has evolved into a key place for China's quest into space. Our reporter Zheng Yibing is at the launch center to give us a glimpse of its past, present, and the future.
China has been pursuing its space dreams and reaching one goal after another. But do you know where all these have evolved from? With this question, I came here, the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center in northwestern China. On April 24, 1970, China's first satellite Dongfeng 1 was launched from here into space. To honor this, April 24 was later celebrated as China's Space Day. I followed a staff member here to explore the history of this launch center.
这是中国的第一个发射塔架，它呢叫5020工位，也是我们国家的东方红卫星呢第一个东方红卫星升起的地方。可以看到，你看那个对面还有一个塔架，它呢叫138工位。这两个塔架呢分别建成于1966年和1971年。从建成到现在呢，一共是发射了44次任务，其中最有名的呢就是我们的第一个东方红卫星。 第一次返回式卫星，还有第一次远程运载火箭，第一次对外搭载和一箭三星这5次发射任务是这个发射场的一个最有这个标志性的这个5个大的事件。可以说，中国航天进步的每一步都在这里留下了它的印记。
And then, new launch towers were built at the launch center. This is the only launch pad in China for manned space missions. It has been in operation for 25 years and now is a backbone for missions to China's space station.
这座塔架是1994年开工建设，1997年竣工，1999年首次执行神舟1号飞船任务。 到现在已经使用了25年，圆满完成了20多次发射任务，把我国20名航天员、32人次安全送入太空。我们每年都要对这座塔架进行全面细致的检修和维护。未来，我们要对这座塔架 进行可靠性提升、智慧化升级等相关改造，确保圆满完成后续的发射任务。
Now the launch center is doing more than that. This is one of the launching complexes for the commercial aerospace companies. Back in 2018, Landspace launched its first rocket here. Over the following years, more than 30 commercial rockets from 6 companies were launched from this area. Here are the commercial launch sites, creating a number of milestones, such as Tianlong-2, the first commercial liquid-fuel rocket in China to reach Earth's orbit by Space Pioneer, Zhuque-2, the world's first liquid-oxygen lithium powder rocket to put into orbit by Landspace, and the first stage of takeoff and landing tests for reusable commercial rockets. The quest continues. In the near future, the companies hope to become the dynamic force of China's space exploration. Zheng Yibing, CGTN in Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center.
You're watching our special coverage of the Shenzhou-18 mission. Looks like you can already see the Earth from the spacecraft. Right, looking at a live picture there.
I just heard the voice that the Beijing Flight Control Center asked the crew they can open the hatch now, which means that they can enter the orbital module, which will be more comfortable.
Oh, so during the 6 hours time, they could move around between the re-entry module and the orbital module.
Exactly, because you know that the space will be much bigger for them. So more comfortable.
And it's getting brighter. You can see sunlight from
actually speaking, with today the lights inside our cabin is already more advanced than before, because today the semiconductor LCD lights are more practical than years before. But they are now preparing for the docking with rendezvous and docking with our Tiangong space station. So they will, I believe, they will also be very busy. You know that we will conduct several orbital maneuvers, most automatically, but the astronauts will monitor all these very critical procedures, which define the distance, the relative distance and relative position between the Tiangong space station and our Shenzhou spacecraft.
And how difficult is the docking process?
We can still remember that during my first cooperation with CGTN, still called CCTV News before, we have the live coverage of the rendezvous and the docking procedure. And at that moment, because we haven't mastered this technology, we still do that very, very careful. And today, because it is very practical, as I mentioned, so this is reason why we can conduct a faster rendezvous and docking. And also, you know, one of the Tianzhou spacecraft, maybe Tianzhou 4 or Tianzhou 5, conducted the fastest, only 2 hours from the launch to the docking of the Tiangong space station, also make a world record.
It's interesting that they can move around now.
We just heard that the power generation, the power supply is very normal.
So things are going well with the spacecraft. I mean, the space station is much bigger compared to what it was in the very beginning.
Yes, the 3 module, the inner volume is more than 110 cubic meters, so very, very big.
Huh. Will it be expanded into even
yes,
bigger
exactly.
one?
So in the future, we will dock another 2010 level module to the front or to the node. So the front docking port will be occupied. But with the 4th module, we will have more docking ports and buzzing ports. So we will have more reliable redundancy, because today we only have 3 docking ports of the whole station. The rear docking port usually is occupied by the Tianzhou.
根据北京实时遥测数据监视判断，飞船太阳帆板展开，工况正常，原导第一次变轨正常，后续工作按正常飞控计划实施。神舟18号。
神舟18号明白。
东风。
东风明白。
华山。
华山明白。
江阴。
江阴明白。
长城。
长城明白。
The Beijing Flight Control Center, the commander just announced that the power generation is normal, and also the first orbit maneuver, as we discussed, is also normal.
This is to better position the spacecraft to dock with Tiangong space station.
They will conduct from the after they enter the orbit and before the docking, they will conduct several orbit maneuvers. Each one is critical. Each one is important for them to chase our Tiangong space station.
And everyone is also keen to know when China will open its space station for international astronauts. By what stage will we see astronauts from other countries also living and working in the Tiangong space station alongside Chinese astronauts?
I believe we will see this within several years. You know that according to the announcement by...
Let's listen in. Sounds
we will
like
hear the formal
official
announcement of the result.
Officials, experts. According to the Beijing Aerospace Control Center and the flight data and report, the Long March 2F Y-18 carrier rocket has sent Shenzhou-18 manned spacecraft to the preset orbit. The solar panels have been unfolded and are functioning well. I now declare the launch of Shenzhou-18 mission a complete success.
终报告，发射结果宣布完毕。北京明白。
There you have it, an official confirmation from the command center. The launch is a success. That was Zhou Lipeng, director of the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center and the commander at the launch site, officially confirming once again the launch is a success. Let's now return to our reporter Huang Yue at the Beijing Aerospace Control Center. So Huang Yue, how did the team at the control center react to Shenzhou-18's successful launch?
Hello to you, Qiuyuan, again. And of course, everyone is excited here, even though they've already carried out such missions for several times. But in the meantime, as you can see, it's still quiet and calm here because for the ground control team, their work has not been finished yet. Because as we just heard that after the spacecraft being separated from the rocket and entering the predetermined orbit with the crew in good condition, the launch has been recognized as a complete success. But after entering orbit, the Shenzhou-18 spacecraft will perform a fast automated rendezvous and docking with the radio port of the space station core module Tianhe, and this process will take about 6.5 hours. And then forming a combination of 3 modules and 3 spacecraft, and then the Shenzhou-18 crew members will meet with their colleagues in Tiangong Space Station, the Shenzhou-17 crew members, and they will do the handover work for several days, and then on April the 30th, the Shenzhou-17 crew members will finally come down back to Earth. And according to China Manned Space Agency, the Shenzhou-18 crew members will stay in orbit for about 6 months, and they will witness the arrival of the Tianzhou-8 cargo and the Shenzhou-19 crewed spacecraft. And they will, during their stay, they will conduct over 90 experiments in fields such as basic physics, space medicine, space life science, space technology. And they will also carry out 2 to 3 extra vehicle activities. And so now everyone is still waiting for the docking, and it's for the ground control team, it's still not the time yet to relax. They are still working very carefully and working hard. Back to you, Qiuyuan.
Thanks so much. Huang Yue live for us at the Beijing Aerospace Launch Center. Well, quite a successful launch. How do you feel about it, Professor Yang?
Absolutely, it's already a routinary operation for all of us, but still I should emphasize that for every space mission, always the launch phase and the return phase will be the most risky part. So you know that in other countries that do have, for instance, such as the Challenger disaster, 7 astronauts lost their lives during the launch. So we must, although we've already been very, very practical, as your colleague already mentioned, but still they are very, very careful. I think this is attitude of a professional. So I think in the future, this is already a very successful mission, but in the future, we still should be very careful during every launch mission and during every return to our landing site. You know that in the future, China will also have the second generation manned spaceship, already have its name called Mengzhou. This will not only be used for the bring our astronauts to the moon, but also will be used for our Tiangong Space Station. But the version for Tiangong Space Station will have at most 7 astronauts. So in the future, we will have more chance for our astronauts not only have those professionals, but also have visitors as tourists.
How do you feel about it after witnessing another historic moment of the space program of China?
Yeah, it's a great start for the mission of the Shenzhou-18. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to their, extra vehicle activities, their scientific experiments. Yeah, right. Yeah, because remember for the Shenzhou-17, the crew had two skywalk, the EVA activities, right? So they do some experiments. They also do some maintenance, repairment of the spaceship, of the space station. Yeah, they also do quite some experiments. Yeah, but I'm expecting that for the crew of Shenzhou-18, they're gonna work on a lot of new things.
Exactly, and now they're heading to the Tiangong space station. They'll be staying there for 6 months. Another exciting journey. Thank you very much, Professor Yang and Professor Say. Now, China has just successfully launched its Shenzhou-18 crewed mission with its 3-man crew on board. Before we go, let's take a look back at the key moments of the launch. I'm Li Jiuquan in Beijing. Thank you so much for watching our special coverage. Have a good one.
航天员叶光富、李聪、李广苏出发。是，敬礼。